I'm ready to slash and burn.
Jason and I were really good buddies from college, and
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And I am thrilled. I'm sure that he doesn't even understand like the level of thrilled that I am to talk about this robot. But I have Kekoto Maane here today to talk about serial killer and like all things NHRL. Super excited.
I'm happy to be here.
Yes. So I know that you probably didn't expect how excited people were going to get about this robot. But before we talk about serial killer in particular, I kind of want to hear the backstory of like how you got into combat robotics and anything that you did, you know, with robots prior to this last NHRL live stream.
Thank you. So, man, I'll be honest with you, robot fighting has been part of my life for so long. I honestly can't remember a time before that. Before I built my own robots, I definitely watched the classic show. Not when it was airing. I was born in 2003, but I think maybe like as young as maybe like 10 or 12 or something. I remember watching some of the older fights from Comedy Central, also the old version of Robot Wars, and also just random fights from any events I could find. And I always want to make my own combat robot. I've thought of so many ideas, even though I knew nothing about putting things together or engineering or so on like that. But yeah, I just loved watching the show. I remember I would even make my own little robots out of like Legos or cardboard or whatever else and just make my own play fights with them. I kind of still do that. I actually have a very small show called BattleBots at Home. And, you know, as the name implies, it's basically I take the hex bugs and the Lego robots and I kind of just smash them together, but I edit it as if it's like the official show. And it's not meant to be taken serious at all. But I enjoy recording. It doesn't get a lot of views, but, you know, I already did that anyway. So I might as well record myself. And it's just a fun little mini series just to mess around with. As for making actual robots, I built my first robot in 2018. Its name was PFR because it stood for Perfect Fighting Robot, because I knew for a fact it's going to be the exact opposite of that. It had Lego wheels. It used servos for drive, so its drive was pretty bad, and it ran on AAA batteries. And its weapon was kind of so you know those cubes that you use to put up blinds and everything?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the main body was essentially 4 of those super glued together. And the weapon had one of those, like the metal hooks that you put the actual bar of the blind on. It used that, and basically it spun it sideways so it could potentially get underneath an opponent and suplex them, but sideways. It's kind of hard to describe without showing. And it didn't do very well. I competed with it I think I retired it back in like 2019. It doesn't exist anymore. It had a lifetime record of, I think, 1-12. And that one win was actually my first event. It was a rumble because I already got eliminated. Launcher Jordan won the fights. The batteries popped out because it's AAA batteries. And the other fight, it actually went to full 3 minutes, but it lost pretty bad. It got outdriven. The point is, it got into an exhibition rumble. And so long story short, there was a vertical spinner. It was called My Friend Told Me What to Say. And basically, it took out all the other bots. It kind of left me alone. But then when it came after me, I managed to turn. I got a lucky shot and flipped him over, and he couldn't self-right. And I was the last robot standing. And I actually won a robotics shirt. And until I got this official shirt, that's what I've been wearing, because I was just so proud that I won a fight, technically.
That's awesome, though. I mean, you know, it takes time. Obviously, it takes time, you know, to learn these things, and to win any fight is really cool. What have you done, you know, since that? Have you made any other robots since then before Serial Killer?
Oh, most definitely. Like, Serial Killer is my newest bot. Literally, it did not exist a couple of weeks ago. So PFR got retired. So I made another fairy weight. And this is actually kind of a good segue. So if you saw Serial Killer, you notice that in one of its fights, it had a mini bot called Flaky Boy. That robot was not made specifically for serial killer. It's been around way longer than serial killer. It's my fairy weight robot, Flaky Boy, and basically it. So I actually have it right here. It's kind of hard to see. So what it is it's an actual dustpan, like from my broom. It's a servo attached to a Lego piece that is super glued to that dustpan. And then I have the actual cereal box. And so I guess you could say this is like the first version of serial killer. It uses N20 motors that are just super glued to it. And amazingly, despite tangling with a few beetle weights, it still works relatively. And so I should make it clear now that amazingly, I'm actually not the first person to make a cereal box themed robot. I don't know. I remember a long time ago, the robot that inspired Flaky Boy, which in turn inspired serial killer, is called the Crave Monster. So I don't remember the name of the YouTube channel, but there's a popular YouTube video called Cereal Box Robot, The Path to Victory. It was back in like 2016. This guy, he got foam board, he got a Crave cereal box, and kind of like a serial killer and Flaky Boy, it would encapsulate the other robots. And because of its light materials, even though it weighed the same, it was so much bigger, and it would just eat other robots. And it actually won that event, and it actually did pretty good before it eventually retired in, I think, 2019. I don't know if the guy still competes anymore, but I want to be clear that this would not exist if that robot did not exist. So the Crave Monster is the original cereal box robot.
That is very cool though. And I had no idea. I mean, like, it's still awesome. Even though you weren't the first to do it, it is still very, very awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I love that robot. And so that led into Flaky Boy, which I made because I made this during the 2020 lockdown when I couldn't get into most events. And I kind of just want to make a robot out of whatever I had. So using spare electronics, using the actual dustpan from my broom and one of my cereal boxes, I thought this seemed like the easiest thing to do. So I put it together, and Flaky Boy's actually done all right. So it's only competed by itself twice because unfortunately there hasn't been as many fairy weight events for like 150 gram robots. They're really popular in the UK, but in the US they've kind of been dying out. Flaky Boy, its first event was back in like April of last year, I think, and it went 1 and 2. It's also competed at Clash of the Box 2022. That's actually an event in North Carolina that's held by Chuck Butler from Team Gruff. That guy's great. Clash of the Box was my first event anyways. And Flaky Boy went, so a funny story with Flaky Boy there is that it went 0-2, but in a weird way. It lost its first fight against Vertical Spinner. It grabbed him. Eventually they cut my wire. I lost fair and square. The second fight, it had a good back and forth match against a wedge. And so obviously no damage was done. I made a few driving errors, but I grabbed him to cereal box every now and then. And it went to the judges. And long story short, it was so close that they decided the only way to decide who won was, so Chuck, he got out one of those Rock'em Sock'em robot rings. And then me and my opponent would do Rock'em Sock'em robot. And whoever won that fight would win. And I barely lost by a few seconds. I popped it up and I thought I won, but I noticed that I did it like 2 seconds after they popped my head up. So if I was just a little bit better at Rock'em Sock'em robots, Flaky Boy would have won that fight.
That is so great. And what a great way to decide who the winner is in that match. Yeah, that's terrific. Now let's talk about the last NHRL event and serial killer. So, obviously, like you said, serial killer kind of came from Flaky Boy, was the, original one that you had. What made you decide to like kind of take it one step further and create this robot for NHRL?
Yeah, so I've been wanting to compete in NHRL for a while now. The biggest reason why I haven't yet is because for most of the time I lived in Georgia, which would be far away. I recently got accepted into WPI. I don't know, some people may already know this, especially with the hat I was wearing on stream, but I'm now part of the WPI robotics team, which includes famous robots such as Eruption, Fully Defined, Sepiol, and so on and so on. And so also going to North Havoc in general, it seemed like a good idea to debut another beetle weight because serial killer is not my first beetle weight robot. It wasn't as popular, but on stream, there's another bot called Counterattack. That was my robot. And it's basically half a D2 kit essentially. Bot Kit sells an MW1 kit, a make your own weapon kit. And so it's basically a 2-wheel drive D2 kit, but it had a grabbing arm on top. And I thought it was cool. It's gotten a few wins, but I really wanted to enter a second robot just because I want to guarantee I'd at least get 4 fights, because I didn't want to just go 0-2 and have to be bored for the rest of the day. Even if I got to hang out with all my friends and everything, it'd be nice just to fight anything else. And so I thought, what is the best, by comparison, Flaky Boy's technically one of the best robots I've made in terms of actually being somewhat viable. Not that much, the bar isn't very high. But I knew I wanted to make another robot. So the idea would be to enter Counterattack and Serial Killer, just so I get at least 4 fights. And for Serial Killer, I signed it up for September. I did not actually build it until the week of the event, because all I knew was that it would involve serial boxing, and that's it. Originally, I was going to do like this whole CAD design with like TPU, TPU dustpan, a TPU box, and everything. But long story short, it didn't work out. And while WPI does reimburse robots, it's a long process, and there's no way that would have gotten done in time. So I just had to make Serial Killer out of whatever I had. So I got my trash bin. I took the electronics and the main body out of one of my other Antweight's Backstabber. It was an Antweight Crush I built a while ago. And basically, it was an Antweight super glued to a trash bin. Then I covered the trash bin in cereal boxes, and I got a servo, an old servo from Counterattack. I attached a spoon to the servo, and then I attached a spoon to the cereal box. And then at that point, you just had Serial Killer, a robot built out of a trash bin, old electronics, and cereal boxes.
That is great. I loved the result of all of that, and to be able to put that together in a short period of time. I mean, it really, it became something that obviously a lot of people have caught on to and enjoyed. I mean, how was that event for you overall? Because like you said, you'd really been wanting to do Norwalk. So how exciting was it to get that opportunity and just like kind of their whole production that they have there?
Oh yeah, Norwalk production. It is without question the highest level production out of any event I've ever gone to. Over the past 4 years, I competed at, I think in total like maybe 10 or 11 other events. Norwalk Havoc, I loved all those events. Norwalk Havoc is just so much bigger. It's like the BattleBots of the smaller scale. It even has other BattleBots competitors. It's just amazing. Like everything was professional. They had a lounge room where you could watch your fights. They had the green room where you could get ready, get set up for fights. Not to mention like the filming quality of the fights. It wasn't just one stream with like one camera angle and no commentary. Like this is basically, it had multiple camera angles, replays, and this is basically the closest I've ever gotten to compete on BattleBots. And even then, Norwalk actually improves from BattleBots in certain ways, just like everything is just so big. Things don't seem rushed. It's a lot more chill while also keeping a steady pace, obviously. As for how I competed fight-wise, I competed with Counterattack. It went 0-2, 0-3 with a grudge match. Its first fight was against a bot called Meta, which is from the same guy who made Project Liftoff. It was a 2-wheel drive egg beater, hence why it's called Meta, obviously. It actually looked pretty unique, though, in my opinion. It looked like a great robot. And in preparation for this fight, Drew Davis from Jack Move and Jackrabbit, he's one of my heroes of the sport. He was nice enough to cut me out some UHW grabbing arms. And on one of those grabbing arms, I stuck a spike on it. And the idea was to try to stab through the top armor of Meta. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, and he beat me pretty badly. He ripped off the wheel. It did not go well. In Counterattack's next fight, I fought, ironically, another D2 kit that was 4-wheel drive, had a Fingertech Vert. It went to full 3 minutes. It didn't go my way, though. And for the final fight, I actually fought Project Liftoff in a grudge match. I don't think it was streamed. He kicked my butt, obviously. Now, so yeah, Counterattack, it did okay, but it could have some improvements. Now, as for Serial Killer, while I had some expectations for Counterattack, I had no expectations for Serial Killer. The idea was that if it ever won, it'd be by accident. It had so many design flaws. The electronics were exposed because since it's hollow, I couldn't put it on the inside, and I couldn't put the electronics on the outside. So the electronics were just on top. The battery was exposed. And honestly, I think Norwalk Havoc Robot League is the only place I could get away with doing that. It also could barely turn because the wheels were so far back. and of course it couldn't self-right, which came to bite me in my first fight, in which so the thing about serial killer was that because of how big it is, it's kind of hard for me to gauge where things actually are. So against Bloodfish, I thought I grabbed him, and then I drove into the wall. Turns out I did not. It was just from my perspective. I thought I grabbed him, and I flipped over. I couldn't self-right, and that was it. You also saw Flaky Boy, my friend Jason, who's also from WPI. He was driving Flaky Boy. He did a good job, but unfortunately, I kind of messed up there. I then had another fight against Fallout, which was a 4-bar lifter. It was pretty good. Unfortunately, I couldn't use Flaky Boy for that fight because I used it in another fight with Counterattack. It got messed up. It couldn't drive, and that fight was directly right after the Counterattack fight. So Serial Killer had the fight solo, and actually went the full 3 minutes. Unfortunately, I didn't put the head on right, and it came off. And even if that didn't happen, I don't think Serial Killer was going to win that. It just got outdriven. It could barely drive. Fallout was just an amazing control bot. Now, time for the fight we've been waiting for. So I knew I wanted. So I knew from the start that Serial Killer would be redesigned. Like, I would never use that version of the bot ever again. It was just there to exist, and it served its purpose. And honestly, Serial Killer was a pain to store in my room. It was a pain to get into the event because I had to carry it in. I had to put it in the car. It barely fit. And I just didn't feel like taking it back when I knew I was going to use it again. So I knew I wanted to fight something with fire because that would just be funny. I originally wanted to fight Mixtape, but Calvin was just so good at winning. He was still in the bracket, so that couldn't happen. So I did an next best thing, Milk Tankette. And let me just say, the team behind Milk Tankette, they are some of the most amazing people I've ever met. I even loved them back when I was just a fan of Nordic High War League, one of my favorite teams, great personality. And I knew that if I wanted to fight someone as a grudge match, they'd be perfect for it. And so the fight itself, we all know the fight by now. Amazingly, Serial Killer did something. It actually did okay at the beginning. I was able to actually grab them with the flames, and I actually did some damage to them because I kind of fanned their flames onto themselves, kind of. And I was actually pushing them around for most of the match. I really did get good pushes on, but unfortunately, even despite pushing them around, the fire still burnt through everything. And eventually, if you look closely in the replay, you can actually see the battery start to swell up from the flames. And eventually the machine just died, and there wasn't much else to do. And I was just so proud of that fight. Like, it was just so incredible. I could only have that fight at Nordic High Robot League. It was just so funny. And like, we just left the bot in the trash. Like, when they put the bot in the, you know, when there's like a fire and they put it in like the sandbox, yeah, we just left it there. It wasn't worth salvaging anything there because I just didn't want to deal with the chemicals from all that. So that versus Serial Killer, whatever's left, it's still back in like the trash can of Norwalk. That thing is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And I'm really proud of that fight. That may just be my favorite fight I've ever done in my entire robot fighting career.
I mean, it was perfect though. Like, you know, not only to go up against that team, but Serial Killer and Milk Tankette, I mean, like they just go together. So yeah, that was great. Although it's kind of sad that, you know, nothing could be salvaged, but I'm glad to hear that you plan to like recreate and make a different version of Serial Killer. Now, I would imagine with having more time instead of being rushed that you may have some different plans for it this next time.
I actually do. So I actually have, so what I have here is a TPU body. Now, I actually didn't make this. I don't know if you've heard of the robot Clyde. It's also from WPI. It's an orange robot that shoots out fire. Well, the guy behind that, because I'm part of Robotics Club, he's redesigning Clyde, and he didn't want this old version of the body anymore, so he just gave it to me. And right now the plan is that this will be the main body of Serial Killer. I'm going to attach maybe some hard forks to this, and of course put a big servo, or more accurately like a gear motor, on top, and of course have the big old serial boxes, obviously. And hopefully the electrons will be more enclosed here. So I do want to make Serial Killer at least somewhat more competitive, but I still want to have that charm of the old version. So don't worry, it's still gonna have googly eyes, still gonna have the giant cereal boxes, but it should be at least a little bit more competitive. It will be able to self-right. its wheels are more spread out, so it can actually drive better. Jay, this is the bare bones beginning of the new version of Serial Killer. It's definitely still not going to win the whole thing. Maybe it'll get 1 or 2 fights, but no matter what wins it gets, those fights will be entertaining.
Yes, they definitely will. If the bot is anything like the original version, I'm sure. Now I'm also curious because I know some fans have asked about this. Are there any plans for like serial killer t-shirts or something that people will be able to purchase?
Yeah, so I never thought I'd get in a position where I could potentially do merch or something. Right now, I have the idea to just make some simple stickers and to pass them out for free to everyone at the next event. And right now, I don't have a lot of experience with logo design. I'm going to look into that. But right now, I'm thinking I have like the Kellogg's logo, the Kellogg's font written as serial killer in the Kellogg's font. However, it has fire on top. Just a little reference towards that. That's the main idea for now. But yeah, I'm just impressed with how much people love serial killer. I've seen some fan art. I shared it on my Facebook page. The TikTok video of the fight has 80,000 views. So many people have talked about serial killer. Behind the Bots guys, I've talked about it twice already. And it has just been surreal. I have never felt like this has been incredible. People have known me in the past, even before serial killer, but this has just really blown up my popularity in general. And it's just incredible.
Well, that's great. Like this is my first time getting to really meet you and talk to you, but from everything that I've heard, from people, everything that, you have kind of gotten as a result of this is well deserved. So
Thank you. It just means so much to me. Like even being on this podcast is a whole thing. Like usually I'm the one just listening to other builders on podcasts while working on my robots and everything. And now I'm the one on a podcast. And that's just so incredible to me.
yeah, absolutely. Now, is there any like, from different people that I've talked to, I mean, there's some people that are happy with, doing Norwalk and making the smaller bots, and there's others that, have plans to eventually work up to build a heavyweight and do, battle bots or something like that. Is there any like desire on your part to eventually go to that level, or are you happy just doing things at Norwalk?
Well, I'm definitely happy doing things at Norwalk. I do want to be on BattleBots someday. It's going to be a while, but being on BattleBots would be my ultimate dream. I do think that as a part of WPI, that dream is more attainable now. Even though we don't really have Ribot anymore, that robot has kind of, while it was a WPI bot at first, all the members have kind of graduated and taken the bot with it. And while the school itself probably won't make its own heavyweight anytime soon, a lot of the members from this club has gotten on there, like Brian Boxel, the guy with Eruption. That guy's great. I love him. He's on the Bloodsport team. Like he's over making parts in Washburn, one of the institutes in our college. He's over there making parts for Bloodsport right now. A couple of members have gotten on like teams like Blip and Tantrum. And so honestly, there's a good chance that through some connections, I could end up on BattleBots in some way. While I would like to make my own heavyweight, I've realized that's most likely not going to happen for a long time. But I would want to be on BattleBots so much. But for now, as I've said, Nord Havoc is like the closest I've gotten to that. Just such a professional feeling. The audience is great. All the other competitors are great, as with every event I've ever gone to. And it's just been, without question, the best event I've ever gone to. I will be back in November. I hope to come back. As long as WPI is going, I'm going with them because I'm part of the team now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure that everybody's excited to see that. I'm also just curious, like, who are some of your favorite robots, whether it be at like the, beetle weight or lower levels or the heavyweights? Like what are robots that get you excited?
Oh, that's a great question. So for starters, I've always been a fan of flippers like Hydra, Bronco, Blip. In fact, it didn't see too much. It only fought 2 times, but I actually made a fairy weight flipper that I have over here. Its name is called Fall Damage. And so what I did is I wanted as much flipping power as possible. So even though it's a fairy weight, 150 grams, I took a 22 millimeter gear motor, like one of the drive motors on like a beetle weight, and I directly attached a flipping arm to it. The problem was that obviously it's made it overweight. So I decided that I would make it a walker kind of. And so these servos under here, this is meant to be the feet. And I have nails attached to those feet. And basically when they turn, the robot kind of scuttles around. It doesn't move very well, but it moves just enough. So I got a weight bonus, courtesy of Chuck Butler from Clash the Bots. I've already told you about him. I don't know if this would get a weight bonus at other places, but he was nice enough to give me a weight bonus. So this is actually 225 grams. And even though I never won a fight, I did get a lot of good flips in one fight. And I'm just proud that this worked. So who knows, I may make another version of this. If I ever make a third veal weight, I might do it, but that won't happen for a long time. I'm also, one of my favorite bots of all time, I've also loved Crushers. And one of my favorite bots from BattleBots is Kraken, no doubt. Matt Spurts, I'm friends with him. I've met him a lot of times in Florida. He's an amazing guy, and his bot is incredible. I've always been a fan of Crushers. In fact, Backstabber was actually a Crusher, mostly existed because of Kraken. Like I saw Kraken, I was like, hey, I want to make a Crusher. So I built an Antweight Crusher. It doesn't really exist anymore. I don't know if Backstabber's retired or not. I might make it eventually, but I'm not going to any Antweight events anytime soon. So for now, Backstabber's existence kind of up in the air, but that Crusher mostly exists because Kraken exists.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of these bots, no matter what the level, are inspiration, for other robots in the future. I also am a huge fan of Kraken, because Kraken is a Pokemon, as Matt Spurk has said, and I am excited to see the next evolution of that bot going forward.
I'm definitely excited to see the next version of Kraken too. I've always loved Crushers. I love Matt, and I hope to see them back soon. I'm excited to see what they bring.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the next Norwalk event. I mean, Norwalk, those events are every couple of months, so that they come up pretty fast. What are you doing over the next couple of months to kind of prepare for the next event?
So far, I do have some design ideas. So the thing about Counterattack I've talked about is that it's a very reusable bot. Like I've used the same body for the past year. I've never actually changed the body. I've had to change some motors or some electronics, but the main body of the robot, it has stayed the same despite all those fights. And so realistically, I could get Counterattack up and running like today. I could just put in some new motors, wired electronics again, and then that's good. Counterattack, it's mostly there just to throw it in there, see what happens. As for Serial Killer, right now the plan is amazingly, I actually haven't done any CAD on any of my robots. They've all been kind of YOLO'd. I just put it together and just hope it works out. But for this time, I do want to at least try to make like a bigger dustpan for Serial Killer. I already showed you the TPU body, even though I didn't make that myself, but I am learning some more stuff here. I am thinking about switching to brushless. Well, no, actually, amazing. Serial Killer was actually already brushless. It reused brushed motors from Backstabber, which in of itself was brushless. However, I kind of want to experiment making like my own brushless motors, as opposed to just because those are like the FingerTech drop in and they work thing, and they do work, but the settings were kind of off. I don't know anything about mixing. I got to learn something about that. And just in general, I do want to make Serial Killer slightly more competitive, even though that's not the main priority.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the important thing, like to me, like I have a very competitive spirit, but I also like to have fun. And I think that's the point. If you're not having any kind of fun, then it seems like it would be pretty miserable. So
Exactly.
Yeah, Serial Killer is a fun robot, and it's kind of meant to have that kind of spirit about it.
Yeah, I will say this. I knew going into this sport from beginning that I was not gonna get a lot of wins. Like the most amount of wins I've ever gotten at an event is 2, and that's rare. That's the most amount of wins I've ever gotten. And most times I go completely winless, but I do get some entertaining fights. In fact, like just last weekend, I actually built a new robot. So WPI, we have our own plastic ant competitions. And for the first time ever, I actually built a spinner. It was a big horizontal spinner, like a giant wide bar. I built it with one of my partners because it was like a pair up event, like 2 people get together, they make a robot and just bounce ideas off each other. and it didn't do very well again, but it's pretty hilarious. Long story short, since I have no experience with weight balancing, because I never built a spinner before, the robot, its weapon was way too big and it would immediately flip over every time. However, in one of those fights, it flipped over, but it could still spin while upside down. And even though it didn't hit the opponent with its blade, it hit the opponent with its body and actually did some damage that way. And that was a split decision. We almost won that fight. But yeah, most of my bots don't win that well. Flaky Boy, it's like 1 in 4. Fall damage, it's 0 in 2. Counterattack, like 2 in 6. Serial Killer, 0 in 3, and so on and so on. But when they lose, it's pretty funny.
Hey, sometimes like matches that you lose can be some of the best ones.
Yeah, this is the perfect example of that. I clearly lost that milk tank fight, but I feel as though I won metaphorically. Like, I do feel as though Serial Killer has unintentionally become a more popular bot than some bots that actually, win.
Yeah, that I would say that is true. I am definitely excited to see the next version of Serial Killer and what you do, and I'm sure that a lot of other fans are as well. So I'm so excited to have had you on the show and been able to talk about this robot and everything else that you're doing. It's really exciting.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. Just in general, I will always love the robot fighting community. Some of the best people I've ever met. It will always hold a special place in my heart. All these people is like a second family to me, and I will be in this sport for as long as I'm alive, realistically.
Well, that is great. I am glad to hear that. For fans that are watching, I mean, I've already heard that feedback, but if you want to see more NHRL content, please let me know, because I will keep doing that. I love robots of all types, so I will talk to anyone about robots on my show, that has something to say. So keep watching. There will be a lot more coming, especially after the BattleBots filming, and I do hope that everybody keeps watching the show.